So here we go. Section 7.4. We only finished about, I don't know, maybe about 3/4 of it, 2/3 of it yesterday. We're going to finish it up today. But let's just review very quickly here what we learned yesterday, or at least what I taught. I don't know if you learned it or not, but at least I taught it. So we had something like this. Had a triangle, and then you had a line in there that was parallel to one of the sides of the triangle. Remember that? All right, so this is the only time that this can happen, is if these two things are parallel to each other. I could have drawn a side here parallel to this side, or I could have drawn one here parallel to this side. I just decided to draw this one right here, okay? Now what it's done, this parallel line has taken this side and broken it up into two sections. Do you see that? You've got a section here and a section here. And I'll just call it A and B. Is that all right? And then I'll call this C and D. All right, so if you have this situation, you've got a triangle, and this right here is parallel to this. They have to be parallel to each other. And this side right here is broken up into, how should I say this? It's the segments of this side are proportional to the segments of this side. That's a good way to say it. You hear what I just said? The segments of this whole side is broken up into two segments, A and B. And this side is broken up into two segments, C and D. Well, they are proportional. So that means what? That means if I compare A to what? To B, that should equal, what do you think? C to D. All right? Now, of course, they're going to put numbers in here, aren't they? They're going to put numbers in here, and then you'll have one of the ones are missing, and then what do? You cross multiply. Don't just set things equal to each other just to pretend that you're showing work on your homework. No names or anything. I got to look somewhere, right? So don't just put stuff down. Just don't start setting things equal to each other because you don't know what to do. Review the lesson. Try to do these properly. And for the most part, many of you are doing that. But there's some, I can tell, okay, I can tell you're just writing stuff down just to write stuff down, all right? I'm not this 90-year-old teacher that you guys can get away with things. I mean, you may think you're getting away with it, but you're really not because you're not learning it. That's the key. That's why I give you the homeworks, is so that you learn the material. If all you do is just write down a bunch of stuff just to make it look like you're putting some work down and you get a 5 on the homework, you think you're getting away with it, but you're not getting away with it because you're not learning the information. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to give you a grade. I'm not here to give you 5s on your homeworks. I'm here to teach you the information, and you are here to learn the information. Does that make sense? That's what you're supposed to be doing. Whether or not that's the case, it's a different story, but that's what you're supposed to be doing. So please make sure that you do this and write it down properly. There's another way that we could have set this up. Do you remember that? We went a second way. So you could have gone A to B, C to D, or you could have done another way. What's another way? Put a big or right here. You could have gone A to what? To C. Right. And what would that equal? If I compared A to C, what would that equal over here? B to D. It's really not that hard to see, I don't think, is it? All right, it's pretty easy relationships to see. Look, we'll call this the right side, and we'll call this the bottom. Is that all right? So, I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. How would we refer to this? This is the top right, bottom right. I don't know. We'll call this the left side. Is that? I don't know. Bottom left, bottom right. You want to call it that? Okay. So look, this is the top left, and this is the, I'm sorry, the top left. This is the top right, and this is the bottom right. So they have something in common, don't they? They're on that right side. You follow me? This is, and so I can compare them to each other. And this is the what? The bottom left and the bottom right. So they have something in common. They're both on that one side, aren't they? So I can compare them to each other. Everybody see that? So I can compare them, right? But can I compare A to D? Do they have anything in common? No, they don't. Okay, you cannot go A to D or B to C. You can only go A to B, C to D, or if you wanted to, you could compare what? A to C and B to D. Because watch what happens. If you cross multiply, watch what happens. What's this going to be? AD equals BC. Look over here. If I cross multiply here, what am I going to get? I'm going to get AD equals BC, correct? So it's the same exact thing. So you can make those comparisons to each other. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to put some numbers in here, and they're going to ask you to solve for one of the sides or one of the segments, and then you just go ahead and do that. We clear on that? So that's the first thing we learned yesterday. And then the second thing we learned yesterday, let me copy this. We took that triangle, and it was just a triangle, but then what did we do to that triangle? Do you remember that? We found the what? Right, we call the mid-segment. And how do you find the mid-segment? You take the midpoint of this side, and you could take any of the other sides. I mean, you could have taken the midpoint of this side if you wanted to, but let's just make it kind of easy. Let's take the midpoint of this side. That looks about right there, doesn't it? And watch, if I connect those two midpoints, I'm going to get a line. And what do we know about that line? That line is called the mid-segment, and what do we know about that line? We know two things. I'll tell you what, let's do this. A, B, C, D, and E. So we know two things. What are the two things that we know about D, E, and BC? What was the first thing we knew? They're parallel to each other. Okay, that's the first thing that we know. All right, so we'll just say this. So we know that DE is parallel to BC. All right, if that's the mid-segment. Everybody see that? So if I connect the midpoints of two sides, that mid-segment, that side right there that connects the midpoints, is parallel to the other side, that third side. So we know that's true. What's the second thing that I know about the length of this and the length of this? It's half of it, exactly right. So DE is exactly half of BC. Let's write that down. So DE equals half of what? BC. Everybody with me on that? I'm not going to put the line segment thing on top of it because that means the measure of DE and the measure of BC. So those are the two things that you know is true about the mid-segment of a triangle. It's not that bad. Okay with that? All right. Let's see what else. Maybe we'll do an example after we finish this up. Let's do another thing. Now that's all yesterday. We did all that stuff yesterday. I just reviewed because I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. I don't know, let's go blue lines this time. Watch this. What if you had, let's do it like this. What if you had three parallel lines? It's not a triangle this time. Watch, I'm not going to space them evenly. I'm just going to draw them like this. This is three parallel lines. So put the arrows on all three of them. So they're three parallel lines. Now watch this. What if I drew a line right here? Now that line cuts those three lines. What do we call that line? Transversal. Very good. Okay, we call that a transversal. What if I had another transversal here? Watch this. There's another transversal. So actually I have two transversals and three parallel lines. Everybody see that? Now that's broken it up into segments as well, hasn't it? You see that from here to here? I could put points all over the place, but I'm just going to label it like this. Hope you guys are all watching. So we'll call this A. We'll call this segment B. You understand where A is? It just goes from here to here. And B goes from here to here. And we'll call this little segment C. We'll call this little segment D. This is really, really close to what we just talked about as far as having that parallel line in that triangle. Remember that? Okay, remember it broke it up into those segments? Right? It was only 5 minutes ago. Right? It was this stuff right here. What we're going to do now is really close. But we're not dealing with a triangle, are we? We're dealing with three parallel lines. But it's very, very, very similar to what we just did up here. So it shouldn't be that much different. What do you think? Since I said it was really similar to that triangle, what do you think might possibly be true about the relationships between these A, B, C, and D? That's right. It's the exact same thing. Watch. So I could compare A to what? B. And what should that equal over here? C to D. Very good. All right. That's almost exactly like that first triangle we talked about, isn't it? All right. But it's different. It's not a triangle, is it? It's three parallel lines cut by a couple transversals, and look what you've done. You've broken it up into these segments right here. So I can compare A to B, and then that's going to equal C to D. What's another way do you think I could compare them? I could compare A to what? To C, right. I could compare A to C. And what would that equal if I went A to C? I got to go B to D. Everybody see that? It's not hard, is it? What do they have in common? This is like the top left, bottom left. You see that? So the top left, bottom left, what do they have in common? The left, right? What about this one? This is, so I can compare A to B. And then this is top right, bottom right. They're both on the right. I can compare C to D. Or I can compare A to C. I could say this is the top left, this is the top right. They both have the top in common, so I can compare them. What about this one? This is the bottom left and the bottom right. They both have the bottom in common, so I could compare them. What about this one? What about A and D? Could I compare them to each other? No, because this is the top left, this is the bottom right. Do they have anything in common? Top left, bottom right. No, nothing's in common. I cannot compare A to D. There's a couple other ways you can compare it. Instead of saying A to B, if you wanted to, it'd be the same exact thing. You could compare B to what? To A, right. You just flip-flop it, right? So if you go B to A, what am I going to have to do over here? I got to go D to C. Make sense? Everybody see that? So if I go from the bottom to the top, this one's got to go from the bottom to the top. So I could compare them like that. How do I know if those comparisons are the same? I could always cross multiply. What's this going to be if I cross multiply? AD equals BC. What's this going to be? AD equals BC. Same thing, isn't it? So if they all cross multiply to be the same thing, that must mean they're in proportion. They have the same proportion. You got it? Anybody watching, paying attention? Okay, good. Some of you are. All right, so that's pretty good. And again, what are they going to do here? They're going to put some numbers in here, right? And sometimes they can put some letters in here as well, couldn't they? Like 3x minus 1, 2x plus 5, or stuff like that, right? And then you still have to cross multiply, do some algebra to solve for x, right? So you know what they're going to do. We've been doing that all year, right? It's just understanding the new relationships that we've had before. Let's talk about this. Now, notice, I drew these three blue lines right here, these three parallel lines. Were they evenly spaced? No, they weren't. Okay, they weren't evenly spaced, were they? But now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw it. It's going to kind of look the same, but I'm going to try to make it evenly spaced in between them. Okay. So now I don't really have a way to make sure that it's the same spacing, but we'll just eyeball it. What do you think? About like that? Does that look about the same distance? Yeah, it's not too bad. Alright, now watch this. If I go like this and I go like this, and if I told you that this was equal to this, take a wild guess what might be, we'll call this A and B. Take a wild guess on what might be true about C and D. They're going to be equal to each other. And it really flows from what we just talked about. Because if I compare A to B, what would my ratio, if they're exactly the same, what would my ratio be between A to B? It'd be 1 to 1, wouldn't it? Okay? So if this is 1 to 1, then this has to be what? 1 to 1, because they're in proportion. Does that make sense? So whatever this is equal to, this D has to be equal to the same thing. Does that mean that C and A have to be equal to each other? No, absolutely not, because it all depends on how this is, you know, yeah, how this is angled, right? So if I did that, okay, that distance and that distance isn't the same, okay, but let's do this. But this and this one would still be the same. Everybody follow me? Now, I didn't write this in here, but what must be true about these three lines? They have to be parallel. Okay, this only works if those lines are parallel. So if those lines are parallel, and if I told you that A and B were equal, that means that C and D are equal. So watch this. What if I said that this was, let's put some actual numbers in here. I'll just make this up off the top of my head. What if that was 5 and this was 5, and I told you that this was 7? All right, it's pretty easy. So if that's 5 and that's 5, and I told you this was 7, what's this going to equal right here? It has to be 7. Again, because they're in proportion, right? 5 to 5 equals what? 7 to 7, right? There's a 1 to 1 proportion. Am I right? Yeah. Lonnie and Cookie, please. All right, have a little respect for me, please. Just a little bit, all right? It is. It's a matter of disrespect, okay? Whether you think so or not, I'm telling you, it is. It's very disrespectful. All right, let's do one that let's see. let's do this one. I'm going to go do an example. Back to that mid-segment thing. You remember doing the mid-segment one? So let's do an example with that mid-segment. All right, so here's a triangle. It's a good idea if you write this stuff down. And let's see, this is a mid-segment, so let's find the midpoint. It'd be right here. And the midpoint would be right here. And then we'll connect them. Right there. Alright, and then we got another mid-segment. This one right here. We're going to find the midpoint here. And then we're going to find the midpoint. It actually goes to this midpoint that's already found for us. So watch this. I'm going to do that. Alright, we good with that? Let's put some letters in here. This is R. This is X. This is S. Z. And T. And Y. Alright, here's what it tells you. It says in the figure, it says XY is a mid-segment. So let's find XY. Where's XY? XY, that right there is a mid-segment. Alright, so what must be true? It must be parallel to this side right here. Agreed? Alright, and it must be what? As far as the length is concerned. XY must be what? Half of ST. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what we know about the mid-segment. It also says that XZ is a mid-segment. So this one is a mid-segment as well. So that means that this has to be parallel to this bottom one right here. All right, so they have to be parallel to each other. All right, and they just asked you to, and oh, they put some numbers in here. Let's stick some numbers in, because without numbers, we wouldn't be able to do any of this. They tell you that length is 7, and this length right here is 124 degrees. And they also tell you what RT is. RT from here to here is 13. All right, we good? And they tell you to find, we'll put it up here, they tell you to find like 3 different things. So the first thing, number 1, is to find XZ. Find the length of XZ. So let's take a look. All this stuff that's given to us, let's find out where XZ is first. It's this one right here, isn't it? So that's what we're trying to find. Now remember, it's a mid-segment of RT. So that means I know what RT is, so XZ has to be what? What's the relationship between this mid-segment and this third side right here? It's got to be half, right? Anybody paying attention? This is crazy. Look around. Would that bother you if you were a teacher? It wouldn't? It bothers the stuff out of me, I'll tell you that much. Anyway, so look. This right here is half of the whole thing. I would, you know what I would love to do right now? I'd love to give a short little quiz. That would be awesome. Wouldn't that be good? It'd be good for the ones paying attention because you would know how to do it. And then the ones that aren't paying attention, that'd kind of like show you that you should be paying attention. Not going to, but it's an idea though. It's a good idea. Might consider it one day. So watch. If this is 13, because I got, why do you think? Because people's heads are on the desk, their hands, their eyes are closed, they're studying other stuff, they're not taking notes. What do you think? This is my life. This is what I do. Okay? Would you like that if you poured yourself into something and people just didn't give a rip about it? Wouldn't you get upset? I think you would. I really do. And don't you think I feel the same way? I mean, I don't understand how you don't see how I get upset. That's boggles my mind. Anyway, this is 13, and I mean, if I didn't care, it would be so easy. I would just sit here and just teach and not even worry about it. But I do care. I want you guys to understand this stuff. I picture you sitting right there taking the test on this chapter and saying, Mr. Hamrick, how do I know what this is if I don't know this? And I'm sitting here and I'm telling you right now, and you're not going to know it on the test. All right? I'm going to get people complaining. Well, everybody failed, so it must be the teacher's fault. I get that. Okay? I hear that kind of stuff. But is it really? Is it really? It's because half of you have your heads down. Half of you well, not have, but some are working on other stuff. Some of you guys aren't taking notes. The ones that are looking are kind of looking up at the ceiling, and then there's like a handful. There's just a handful that are actually intent in trying to learn this. That's frustrating. I'll just be honest with you. All right? Okay, enough honesty. Let's do some problems. Okay, watch. This is 13. This right here is half of 13, so that's 6.5. That's all it is. So if I wanted to show work, right, I always harp all the time about showing work. So how do you show work? You just put 1/2 of 13 equals 6.5. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about showing work. Show how you got the answer. And don't tell me, well, I just did that in my head. All right, that's wonderful, but show me what you were thinking. All right, that's what I mean by show your work. All right, number 2. It's ST. We want to find what ST is equal to. So let's come down here and find where ST is. Well, ST is this whole long side right here. Well, there's also a mid-segment here, isn't it? This is the mid-segment. Now this time they tell you the mid-segment and they ask for the longer side. So if they tell you the mid-segment, the longer side is how much of the mid-segment? It's twice as much, isn't it? So what's my work? It's 2 times 7. Now, it's not much work. I'm not asking for a whole lot. Just write down what you're doing in your head and write down the answer. Okay, that's all I'm looking for. So ST is 14. So I'll tell you what, let's just do that. So that's 14. All right, what's the third thing they ask you for? It's an angle. It's angle RYX. Angle RYX. Let's find where that is. Here's R, here's Y, here's X. So this is the angle that I'm trying to find right there. What do you think? Any ideas on that? Well, you could do this. I got parallel lines, don't I? Let's see. I'm trying to think the quickest way to do this. Let's see. Parallel lines cut by transversal. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, absolutely, because right, I'm trying to visualize it without all the other stuff around it. Watch, this is that bottom side, right here, that RY, and this is a parallel line. Actually, we got 2 parallel lines, don't we? We've got this one and this one cut by this transversal. Everybody see that? So this is the XZ, this top one. This is that RT down here on the bottom. And this is your transversal XY. So what is that 124? That's that 124 right there, isn't it? And what is this angle that we're trying to find? It's this one right here. What's the relationship between these two angles? They're alternate interior angles, aren't they? All right. So if this is 124, what's this going to be? It's 124 degrees as well. All right. And sometimes when you have a whole bunch of stuff all written around, it's hard to see, the relationship. But then you separate it, just do 2 parallel lines cut by 1 transversal, and it's a lot easier to see. Wouldn't you agree with that? So that helps out a little bit. All right, and that's the kind of stuff that they're going to ask you on this homework. Let me do another example with that 3 parallel line thing, all right? And then we'll quit, and I'll give you some time to work on this. Here we go. These parallel lines look a little different. They're slanted like this. About like that. I'll tell you what, let's move this down just a little bit. And another one about like that. And I believe that they're evenly spaced. Let's probably go over a little bit more. I don't know, something like that. Pretty close. Alright, let's draw a couple transversals in here. Let's make it a different color. One kind of looks like this. One kind of looks like that. Right? And the blue ones are parallel to each other. I really should write that in here. Alright, so this and this and this are all parallel. Now, let's see what they tell us. They tell us all about the parallel. They say that MP equals PQ. Well, I don't have any letters in here, do I? Let me just write it in here. Is that alright? MP, so it means that this one right here is equal to this one right here. Now, if that's true, if parallel lines cut by transversal, if these two are equal to each other, what does that automatically say about these two segments right here? That they have to be equal to each other. All right? We learned that from that theorem that we just talked about. All right? And they put some stuff in here. So let's put some numbers in here. Remember I said they were going to put some X's and all that? Well, this time they do. All right, so they say this. Oh my goodness, this is real super easy. This is way easier than the other one. For all you guys that like to set stuff equal to each other and not think, this is perfect for you, okay? So if you take a look at this, watch. Here's the x's. These two things have x. These two things have y, correct? So I'm not going to compare this one to this one, am I? Nope. No. All right. What do we know about these two segments? They're equal to each other. So what do we do with those two things right here? We just set them equal, right? Now, in this case, it's perfectly fine just to set them equal to each other because they are equal to each other. Don't set stuff equal to each other when they're not equal, okay? Subtract 3y from both sides, that's 2y. Add a 7, that's a 15. And then divide by 2. 15 over 2. If you want to leave it like that, that's perfectly fine. If you want to write it 7.5, that's fine as well. Okay, I'd take either way. Then, now remember, they didn't tell you that these two segments are equal. You had to figure that out on your own from that theorem. So if we know we have parallel lines and these two segments are equal, that means that these two have to be equal as well. So we realize that they're equal. So again, we just set them equal to each other and we do the math and solve. Shouldn't even have to do this for you, but I will. So subtract 4x from both sides, add a 5 to both sides, divide by 2, x is 4. So there's that answer, and there's that answer, and you're good to go. That's it. All right, so that should help you with the worksheet that I gave you yesterday. I'm going to give you a little bonus worksheet, okay? So I'm going to give you a second worksheet as well. They're both on 7.4. So it's section 7.4, and you have two worksheets. What was the page number to that worksheet? 89. And so I'm going to give you page 90 as well. So you're going to do both of those worksheets right there, okay? 89 and 90. And you got about 10 minutes left in class to start working on this, okay?